would the Raiders try to trade for JJ McCarthy this offseason? Coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why it's not an impossible thing to think about. The reason why we're going to discuss all of this is because if the Raiders miss out on the opportunity to draft a quarterback this high in the draft, maybe instead of just saying, well, we're not going to get Shedeur, well, maybe we're not going to get Cam Ward, maybe you just trade the pick that you have to go get a guy like JJ McCarthy. So why are we talking about this? Well, last week, I was told if the Raiders win a game or two to keep an eye on JJ. Now, I know that not everybody has an opportunity to watch every show that I do or every live show that I do, but this is something that I brought up and I said, if the Raiders end up winning a game, I'm going to have to talk about it a little bit more. Well, I hate that I have to talk about it, but the Raiders ended up winning a pointless game up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The reason why you could potentially look at a trade for J.J. McCarthy is because the Raiders, they like the Michigan product, and I don't really think it should surprise many people out there that this organization liked the Michigan product. So now that the Raiders likely aren't going to have the number one overall pick, and likely it's going to be a little bit more difficult to go up and make a trade for Shedeur or maybe even get a Cam Ward, I'm telling y'all right now, the J.J. McCarthy rumors are going to start. What's unfortunate is he hasn't played this season. He injured his knee early in the preseason, and it would have been a very interesting thing to see between, McCarthy, Sam Darnold, because I actually think that the Vikings might have ended up rolling with the rookie out of Michigan to be their starter instead of Sam Darnold. But why would the Vikings move on from McCarthy? We'll talk about a lot of that stuff coming up here, but if you're going to be a real one, you got to say this. Sam Darnold has earned his flowers, and you have to understand that the Vikings could have a difficult decision that they could make, keeping either Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. Now, some of y'all are going to go, well, Mitch, this is the Raiders report. You're exactly right. So what says you? We got a trade idea here, okay? And again, this is all hypothetical, but if you knew that the organization liked J.J. McCarthy, and if you knew that you weren't going to be able to go out and get your franchise quarterback, and if this was a trade that was available to you, I'm not saying that the Raiders have asked the Minnesota Vikings this. I'm simply putting this out into the universe because it's something that I was told a few weeks ago. So would you do this trade? The Raiders receive J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. The Minnesota Vikings get right now, as it stands, the number 6 overall pick for the Silver and Black. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. Who wins this trade? Type R for the Raiders, type V for the Minnesota Vikings. My answer is going to be coming up after this YouTube ad break. I could make an argument that I could say the Raiders and the Vikings kind of get a win. But realistically, I think you got to say that Minnesota ends up winning this deal. And the reason why that I think that is because I'll tell you right off the jump. I'm not the biggest J.J. McCarthy fan. I will say this, though. I did say that he needs a year to be able to mature, maybe 2 years to do that, and he was able to learn behind Kevin O'Connell in a good offense with Minnesota. I am intrigued by what McCarthy could look like with a guy like Tom Brady. I hear you loud and clear, but think of it as like just buying a car. The Vikings bought a car in J.J. McCarthy with the number 10 overall pick, and a year later they could sell it for the number 6 pick. It's not too often do you drive a car off the lot and then you sell it for way more than what you paid for it. For that reason, I would say the Vikings end up winning that deal, but it also could potentially help out the Raiders because they get a franchise quarterback. So coming up here on the show, why the Raiders could trade for McCarthy this offseason. And here's the other part. If McCarthy was a QB in this year's draft class, I think he'd go maybe above Shedeur. I think he might even go above a guy like Cam Ward. So getting a QB like him at number 6 overall, I don't think it's the worst idea possible. Also, you want a great idea? You got to get started with our sponsor here, Z-Biotics. I'm telling you what right now, they are changing the game, and they're here to hook up Raider Nation. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. And I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-Alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to drink this probiotic before drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. From Thanksgiving feast to New Year's Eve celebrations, this holiday season is packed with events. But don't let the festivities leave you feeling less than merry. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic can help you savor the night and seize the next day. So stay in the loop and go to zbiotics.com/chatsports. You can also scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use Chat Sports at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code, so you can stay prepared no matter the time or occasion. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/chatsports and use code CHATSPORTS at checkout for 15% off. Thank you to ZBiotics for sponsoring the Raiders Report and for all the good times that they help us have here on this show. So here's why the Raiders could trade for JJ McCarthy. The first reason, and it's the main reason, you miss on Shedeur Sanders. So the way that I would explain this to everybody is the Raiders aren't going to go out and trade for JJ McCarthy in the month of March. And realistically, this is, again, based on what we're talking about now and what we're talking about in the future. It can be so many totally different things. Like if the Vikings, which we're going to know what the Vikings did in free agency instead of where I'm making this video at right now. But in this scenario, it's like, you thought that you might be able to go get Shedeur Sanders. You didn't draft, or you didn't sign, you didn't trade for any quarterbacks in the month of March. So you go and you're like, all right, we missed on Shedeur, we missed on Cam Ward. Hey, Minnesota Vikings, is JJ McCarthy available? The only way JJ McCarthy is available is if they gave a deal to Sam Darnold. If they didn't give us a deal to Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold's already with another team, and JJ McCarthy's the quarterback of the Vikings, guess what? You're not going to get JJ McCarthy. So if you miss on Shedeur, because I think that he's going to end up going number 1 overall. I think whether it's the Giants, whether whoever it may be, Shedeur's probably going to go number 1. Now, I know that Sanders is plan A for the silver and black this season. But the Raiders, let's face it, you can't miss on a quarterback yet again this offseason. So because you know that you can't miss on a quarterback yet again, do you get desperate? Do you start doing things that you never thought or even thought about maybe a few weeks ago? And I think one of those things that not a lot of people really thought about is going out and making a deal for JJ McCarthy. But who's the one making the shots? Who's the one making the calls at quarterback for the silver and black? It's going to be Tom Brady. Tom Brady and JJ McCarthy have a really, really good relationship. If you didn't know that, you probably live underneath a rock. I mean, McCarthy and Brady were working side by side, hip by hip, and Brady was not afraid to talk to the guy that was playing at, his alma mater, the Michigan Wolverines. Brady likes the fact that McCarthy had to learn a system with Harbaugh. One of the things that TB12 really talks a lot about is how so many quarterbacks in today's day and age, they go to a college, and if that college isn't the perfect fit for them after 1 year, they transfer, they go somewhere else. They learn a new system, but they don't actually learn a new system. You know what I mean? Like, learning a new system can be like learning a new language. It can be like trying to get better and better. It's not just going to happen overnight. But when you listen to Tom Brady talk, he always says the reason why he was so successful is because not only did he work hard, not only was he dedicated, but he had to learn and go through the system, and it helped him get better and better and better. And his trajectory was actually very similar to a guy like McCarthy. McCarthy's a much better overall athlete, but Harbaugh has compared McCarthy to Tom Brady, and I know Tom Brady would be interested in working with JJ McCarthy. Let's go to the next reason here. Tom Telesco was a big fan of McCarthy last season during the draft process, and I remember it so vividly because I was not a big fan of McCarthy. And again, until I see him come out here and play, and if I can see that he's made some strides, maybe I'll change my opinion on this. But if Telesco likes him and if Tom Brady likes him, well then I think every single Raider fan's got to say, all right, there's at least a chance that this ends up happening. When you know that you're going to be back, and the ways that I'll say this, when you hear Antonio Pierce talk, and Antonio Pierce talked to the media a few times, and it was like, what do you say to the Raider fans that are upset that you're picking number 6? Antonio Pierce said, go talk to Tom Telesco. But he said it in a spiteful way of I'm not going to be back next season. You can go talk to him. So if Telesco and Brady are on the same page at quarterback and they're going to have a lot to say here, it's got to be a reason why we talk about it, and that's why we're bringing up here JJ McCarthy. The final reason, and this is maybe another one, it's the biggest, if the Vikings stick with Sam Darnold, and I can't really blame Minnesota. They have a good problem to have because no matter what, you're either going to get good draft capital and a guy like JJ McCarthy, or you're going to potentially find your future at quarterback in Sam Darnold. I would be a little bit shocked if they just said, F it, we're just going to let him go no matter what because of how good of a season he has. But then again, when you draft a quarterback like they do McCarthy at number 10 overall, you might have to do it. For Sam Darnold, though, if they win the NFC, I'm talking the entire NFC, and they go to the Super Bowl. If you lose in the Super Bowl, yeah, maybe you keep him, maybe you don't. But let's be honest, when was the last time the Vikings were even in a Super Bowl? When was the last time that the Vikings were as good as what they are right now? Because nobody thought Minnesota was going to be good. Nobody thought it was going to happen. And Sam Darnold deserves a lot of credit with that. So if the Vikings give Darnold a deal, kind of like what Baker Mayfield got with Tampa Bay, where you're getting $40, $45 million per year, are you going to just keep JJ McCarthy on the bench? I don't know if you do. I don't know if you keep McCarthy on the bench after giving a deal to Sam Darnold. Maybe you take a page book out of what you see the Atlanta Falcons doing, and they regret giving Kirk Cousins a lot of money. But keeping McCarthy behind Darnold on this roster right now on a team that has a Super Bowl window doesn't make any sense. So you could keep Sam Darnold. You use the number 6 overall pick to go get Darnold, maybe an extra, offensive lineman, maybe a wide receiver, some extra player on defense. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. But to me, this is something that needs to be discussed because the Vikings could stick with Sam Darnold. Now, one more time here, I want to quickly run through and just kind of break down all of my reasons why it is a possibility that the Raiders could go out and trade for JJ McCarthy. The biggest reason is they could miss on Shedeur because you fall down a little bit in the draft order. Tom Brady likes him. Tom Telesco likes him. Mark Davis wants the Raiders to draft a quarterback. And if the Vikings stick with Sam Darnold, the best option for the Silver and Black that's not going to break the bank on a QB that you know that Brady, Telesco, everybody likes, could in fact be JJ McCarthy. Now, if you guys made it this far in the video, seriously, shout out to all of y'all. Hopefully you had a great, great Christmas. Happy holidays. The next time that you're going to see me live on this show is going to be Sunday when the Raiders play the New Orleans Saints. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on. Win, lose, or tie, we're going to ball here on the Raiders Report.